Hey, Richard. Pastor Daniel here with another Fireside Chat. And joining me today is Elder Don Van Sickle. Elder Don, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
How are you
How's
doing?
everybody doing?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Now, you have, I would call this a thing. You have a thing for motorcycles.
A little bit of a thing.
You have a thing for motorcycles. Like, did you get into motorcycles when you were a kid? Was this an adolescent thing? I mean, where did that start?
So growing up in Montana, my dad always said that there's enough ways to die. You don't need a motorcycle.
Okay.
So I didn't even start riding motorcycles till about 15 years ago.
15 years ago.
Yeah. So that's when I started. Started out riding dirt bikes and then.
Would we call that a midlife crisis? Is that?
I don't know what
it kind of, the timing lines up.
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, it's been, it's just something I have a lot of joy. It's good fellowship with other people. We go to the mountains and we ride on the pavement and on the dirt, going back and forth. And my friend makes these amazing videos about our adventures. There's always an adventure anytime we leave town.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. We're in a series with our Fireside Chats where we've been spending time talking to the elders about the Res core values. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking to you about our second value, which is growth. I'm gonna read it to you real quick. It says this: we want to be urgent to grow, becoming more like Christ in gentleness and love, while growing deeper in our study of and obedience to God and His Word. When you see that there, Don, why is growth something that is important enough to be at the very center of our church? Why did the elders have such conviction at that elder retreat so long ago to really put growth in here at the center?
Well, I think what has happened in churches in America is people have become stagnant. They attend, but they're not growing spiritually. And there's disciplines that allow us to grow, but mostly it's rooted in knowing the Word better, being in the Word and being prepared to give an account for the joy that we have and to do it with meekness and fear. But you can't really give a defense if you haven't really studied. So, we believe in the Bible and what it says to be true, and we should constantly be pursuing more knowledge and the ability to share that with other people.
I've heard this many times before in various ways, but it's stuck with me throughout the years, and that is that really the Christian life in and of itself and churches were meant to be rivers, not ponds.
Right.
And, ponds just sort of collect water and they stagnate and they sit and you get algae and you get all sorts of interesting things. But rivers are always moving, and so they're fresh. Yeah. And you don't see the same level of sort of almost decay in them because they're constantly in motion.
So we talked about the Kern River on a previous podcast, but this is a year of years, and the water levels are higher than they've been in decades. But if you look at Lake Isabella, you have an inlet coming in, but it also has an outlet. So that sustains life and everything's fresh. It's not the pond, and it runs into a river, but an inlet and an outlet are critical for life.
Absolutely. And so one of the things we call out in this value is this idea that there's these two types of growth. There's a growth in, I would call it, maybe let's call it a theological growth, right? Knowing more, intellectual growth. Right. And then there's this growth in transformation. So it's life change or it's heart change. And we're saying not one or the other. We're saying it must be both. Right. Which one do you feel like you struggle with? Is it the intellectual stuff or is it the application stuff?
It's the intellectual stuff, definitely.
Yeah.
But I've heard you share from, in messages about how there has to be this balance, right, with love and truth. So I think along with what we know, it's how we share that and how much of it is, a balance of truth and love, because you can't have one without the other to be effective. It's due diligence. Even God himself, is a loving God, but a just God. So there's a balance there.
There is, and there's also they're beyond being a balance as if they're two competing things. The Bible uses analogies a lot of the body, and so we've used this same sort of term from it comes from Hebrews and some other places of this idea that the truth or the intellectual knowledge that you're reading and learning about God has to we would say metabolize, right? It has to be digested. It has to soak into you and enact change in you, or you're not really absorbing it. You're not really learning it. In fact, you could recite it,
Right.
but if it hasn't had a change on you, then you haven't actually learned it. Therefore, the idea of truth and love being interrelated, not just competing things that you have attention of, but being interrelated, is that it's that you've only really received the truth yourself if it has caused you to love more, right? If it's had that change.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you studied the truth, but you didn't really get it.
Right.
And
the book of James is clear about that, being doers of the word. You can know all about it and have this intellectual, but if you're not doing it and if you're not sharing it in a way that with gentleness and respect, then it's of no good.
It's no good. We called out two things in here that we actually went back and forth on this a little as elders: gentleness and love. Gentleness being a thing that we really spent a little bit of time. Like, we're calling out us. Love is the greatest of these. We know that. But gentleness is a thing that, while it is one of many fruit of the Spirit, it's also just listed again and again and again in the Bible. And in fact, if you start looking for it, you'll realize it's listed a lot more than you think it is. And in this day and age of sort of modern Christianity and social media and YouTube and the proliferation and just almost ubiquitousness of information and sermons and opinions, it's like gentleness is the first thing we killed.
Yeah.
This is the first victim.
It's got to go. Gentleness has got to go.
I don't have time for that. It's not efficient enough.
We're on a timeline.
I have 280 characters in my tweet, so gentleness is going to have to go. But in reality, I think the more you look at gentleness, the more you realize it's the one thing that I think Jesus would say is indispensable in the process. It's the prerequisite to being an elder. It's one of the qualifications for being an elder. It is one of the qualifications. We're all called to it. We're actually supposed to grow in it. And so personally, it is my litmus test when I look at people that I would listen to. So maybe like pastors online, sermons I would go listen to, people that write commentaries, opinions, so on and so forth. If I'm evaluating a pastor, of course I want them to have good theology. I need them to have right theology. But one of the big things that I'm looking at, there's a couple, but one of the big ones is, have they in their ministry and even in the public sphere grown in gentleness? Because if they're becoming less gentle over time, I actually want no part of whatever they're feeding on. I want no part of that. They're not maturing in the faith if they're becoming less gentle. Only people that are becoming sweeter and more gentle are people that are actually, I think, worthy of listening to, because I know, well, man, look at, God's been really maturing them over time. If I become a very mature saint in my 70s, 80s, 90s, and I get more bitter, I got a real problem. How do you, Don, personally grow in the Lord right now? Like, what are your go-to disciplines or activities to ensure that you're growing in truth and in love?
So it's definitely being in the Word. I've got other elders that are we're holding each other accountable to be in the Word daily, and just and a desire to be more like Christ. And you talk about gentleness. Just this morning I'm reading in John 2, 3, and 4, and the contrast of events that take place there, from turning over tables to a late night discussion with Nicodemus to a conversation where he had to go through Samaria to talk to this woman at the well. But the gentleness with which he handles those conversations with the highly educated and the adulterous woman, to the point where when it was done, she dropped her water jugs and ran to town to tell everybody about it. And he was pretty firm with her, but he was gentle.
Very.
And I think if that's the bar that we set, to be gentle that way, but be truthful and in love, it's a good balance.
Absolutely. Elder Don, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
Thank you for stopping by. Church, we hope that this is encouraging and edifying to you. We hope that you can hear our heart and our convictions as to why these are cultural values that we believe are at the center of Resurrection Church. Until next time, may the Lord bless you.